Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Bill Huston, and I'll be talking about investment crowdfunding today. I'd like to do the little presentation. After the presentation, it'd be great if you had any questions that you wanted to ask. Be very open to answering those questions. Would love to invite you to our free um, crowdfunding for the culture Facebook group that's going to open up next week. So I'm just going to give you a really brief overview this morning. And from that perspective, if you want to learn more, there's an opportunity to engage with me and engage, with the community that we hope we build around investment crowdfunding and the power that investment crowdfunding truly presents to our community as a new strategy. When we think about investment crowdfunding, for me, investment crowdfunding is all about being able to build a Black-owned business and crowdfunding ecosystem. That business and crowdfunding ecosystem is very important. And the reason it's very important for our community is because currently the traditional funding mechanisms, they don't really work for us. Traditional funding, it just doesn't work for Black-owned businesses and real estate developers. A 2018 SBA report found that minority businesses typically, when they do access loans, have to pay more for those loans. The interest rates are high. The amount that they ask for is lower. And then when you couple that with the fact that, Black-owned businesses only receive 2 to 4% of SBA funding and also 1% or less of venture capital, that is a staggering fact, and that is a staggering number. And it leaves us in a place as the Black business community and as the Black community itself to ask one of two questions. Do we spend our time, energy, and resources trying to convince people to fund us who have demonstrated that that is not their primary interest? Or do we create alternative systems that allows us to fund ourselves, what I like to call community-led economic development? And crowdfunding is the first step in that community-led economic development. One of the things that I want to say immediately about crowdfunding as a community-led economic development tool is that it is perfectly legal today for us to start a crowdfunding campaign. We could do that today. We could do that tomorrow. So when we think about this, and we think about President Obama, I think the best legislation and the most powerful legislation that President Obama left for us was the Jobs Act of 2012. And in 2016, regulation crowdfunding, investment crowdfunding became legal. And I think that is the most powerful economic legislation for the Black community since the Emancipation Proclamation, because it gives us the ability to come together through community, economics, pool our resources, and fund the businesses and real estate projects that we have so much trouble getting funded by the traditional mechanisms that exist out there. I'm going to talk about the Black middle class and kind of the myth of the Black middle class, and really kind of drill down on the difference between income and wealth. Income is the amount of money that you have, on a monthly basis, a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis. And sometimes that money can seem the same coming into Black households, and can seem, and it is the same as the money coming into white households. But what we find is that when you start to compare, those income levels, and you compare white families to Black families, you find is that white families have almost 8 times the amount of wealth as Black families do with the same income. There are lots of reasons behind that. I'll touch lightly on number one is that home ownership is so important for middle class people as a source of their wealth. In the Black community, 71% of the wealth held by middle class people comes from home ownership. In the white community, it's 51%. And the reason is because their homes are normally about 33% more expensive, have 33% more value, but also they are able to diversify into investing in businesses and other real estate opportunities outside of the home. So when we start thinking about investment crowdfunding, there are two sides to investment crowdfunding, and this is what I think is so powerful about that. The one side is today we have the ability to raise capital for our founders, for our Black-owned businesses, for our real estate developers. They can raise capital from their crowd, which they were never able to do before. But the other side of that is an equation is that we have the opportunity to build wealth in our communities, right? So there's individual wealth and there's community wealth. And we have the opportunity to build both of those through investment crowdfunding, because now we actually participate as the investors. When there is a return, when and if there is a return from a business or there is a return from a real estate project, now the community gets the opportunity to share in that value. And that is an opportunity for them to begin building wealth. So as we move on and we think about this, we want to think about wealth and not just income. This was an article that this article really stopped me in my tracks. And I actually put this into the presentation to really say, wow, The Road to Zero Wealth was the name of the article. It says it'll take about 228 years for the average Black family to accumulate the amount of wealth that the average white family enjoys today. That is a really powerful statement. We really need to think about what it is to actually gain wealth, build wealth. What is wealth, and what is the difference between wealth and income? And that wealth is going to be money that stays in our community, that starts to build our community and the culture within our community. And that's where our focus has to be, is on building wealth. And how do we build wealth? We build wealth by owners and loaners and not just consumers. It's interesting when you compare the amount of income that comes in to Black families across the nation. Our spending power is often touted at $1.5 trillion. That would be a larger GDP than all but 12 other countries in the world, including European countries, including Russia. And that is a staggering fact. But the reality is, on the other side, we don't own much. We only own about 2% of all the wealth in the United States. With that much money coming through our hands, that money's not staying in our hands. It's coming to us and it's going out. And why is that? Because we don't have places to lock that money up. And when I say places to lock that money up, that is in business. That is in owning stocks in businesses, in real estate that belong to us and to our community. And what that looks like in the future is, in that article, they said that if the racial wealth divide is left unaddressed by policies and is not exacerbated further over the next 8 years, the median Black household will have zero wealth by 2053. That is a staggering realization, and it should be very frightening for us, because today we actually have a tool like investment crowdfunding that will allow us to, as a group, as a community, address this issue of building wealth, of funding businesses, and moving our community forward. Investment crowdfunding, it's about community capital. One of the things that I like is that if we invest Black, we will definitely buy Black. If we invest back Black and we buy Black, then we will build wealth in our community. I hear the slogan all the time, Black Lives Matters. And from a crowdfunding and investment crowdfunding perspective, I like to say to people, then we should be investing as if Black Lives Matters. And that's investing in our own communities. Investment crowdfunding is an investment strategy that involves investors having ownership in a company or being paid debt as the bank, right? So this is not, a lot of times when people in our community think about crowdfunding, they think about donation, they think about GoFundMe or Kickstarter, where you maybe get a t-shirt in return for your money. Investment crowdfunding is a completely different ball game. This is about me investing in a company and becoming a shareholder in that company, like I would perhaps with a publicly traded company. And that is something that is really, really powerful for us as we move forward and we start to implement this tool in our community. And it's a very viable alternative to more rigid forms of capital raising, the more rigid and traditional forms of capital raising, which many times exclude Black-owned businesses and real estate developers from the opportunity to raise capital. And what crowdfunding does is crowdfunding puts the ball back again, as I said, in our court, because your money is not in the bank. Your money is not in the hands of venture capitalists. Your money is in your crowd. If you're a developer or a business owner, founder, then your ability to excite and engage a crowd of investors determines how much money that you're able to raise. Now, I do want to be clear that this is a strategy that will not work for every company. There are going to be companies that fit the model really well. There are going to be companies that don't fit this model really well. With crowdfunding, one of the things that you have to do is you have to be able to engage your network from the inside out. I like to call that the inner circle. How I get to my inner circle, how I engage my inner circle, those are things that are going to be very important. And being able to say, hey, how do I build my crowd? How do I excite my crowd? And how do I engage my crowd? One of the benefits from my perspective as an investment crowdfunding consultant and strategist is that for the Black community, we have, based on our history, had to be in crowds already. I like to say that people don't necessarily go to church, they go to the Black church. That people they're not necessarily an MBA or a lawyer, but they're in the Black MBA Association, they're in the Black Lawyer Association. So we're already in the crowds. What our conversations in these crowds need to be about, how we move forward with economic development. And the economic development infrastructure is already built within investment crowdfunding. And that's something that I think is really powerful. And moving forward, we have to really think about, be ready to address that and, continue to come together and have those conversations around how do we use investment crowdfunding to fund our founders, Black-owned businesses, and real estate developers. Today, using investment crowdfunding, a group of people could come together, founders, real estate developers, small business owners. They can raise up to $5 million directly from the crowd. That is really powerful. And that's really powerful because that gets you going at the seed and pre-seed levels of capital raising. If you have if you have a product or a service and it gets the traction at the lower levels, then perhaps, venture capitalists or other people will look at that. It's in the really early stages where investment crowdfunding is going to be really powerful to our community, because now through investment crowdfunding, our founders, real estate developers will be able to get the early capital that they need when they're maybe in the idea stage, get this thing out the door and moving. Another benefit, and this is what I like to call a hidden or unseen benefit of investment crowdfunding, is that normally, and especially if you have a consumer-facing product or service, the people who invest in your campaign are going to be people who are actually going to be your customers. They're going to be your investors, and they're going to be your best brand ambassadors. They are going to shout from the highest mountaintop how great this company is, this real estate development, because now they have a financial benefit tied into this. And this is a really important hidden benefit from my perspective on what investment crowdfunding does, because not only does it help us build businesses, but it helps us build community around those businesses. It helps us want to support these businesses financially, which helps us to keep the dollars in our communities longer than 6 hours. It helps us to help these businesses grow, develop, offer more products and services. We have the opportunity to talk directly to these founders, business owners, and real estate developers, so we can have some input into the process and maybe the new businesses that they create. Have an input into the process of almost like a focus group. And that is really powerful. And, I want you to always remember that with investment crowdfunding, your money is in your crowd. And that is something that I think is really, really important for us to always remember as we move through this process. Really excited to have this opportunity, to talk about investment crowdfunding, as we think about how does this actually intersection with the black church and rethinking the black church. And one of the things that I say about crowdfunding, and I use this as an example, is that if you are in the black church, then you are very familiar with crowdfunding. And the reason I say that is because the church, when you go to the church, to the building, you expect the building to be there, you expect the building to be in good shape, you expect the lights to be on, the water to be running. No one person pays for that. What happens is that the congregation pool their money, right? You get small amounts of money from a large group of people to make sure that this one goal is met, and that's that the building is in great shape, that it's functioning. And crowdfunding is very similar to that. It's the same thing. In its essence, crowdfunding is about being able to get a group of people to come together to raise these funds. And now what we have to start thinking about with these new tools in investment crowdfunding is how we're able to do that, right? To create businesses, to build real estate development. And now we have the ability and the capacity to do that. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for the opportunity to present this to you. And I would love to open this up for questions. Put any questions in the chat, and I'll go from there. Thank you. Thank you very much, Christina, for that. Again, I think I had mentioned this before, but I'm going to create a Facebook group. You can search for the Facebook group. It's called Crowdfunding for the Culture. It is a free Facebook group. And what I would recommend is that you join that free Facebook group. And because there are two things. You're going to be about crowdfunding, how crowdfunding works. And also you're going to be able to start building crowds because you're going to be in the group with other people. Absolutely great question again there, Christina. Yes. By the Block is a Black female-owned regulation crowdfunding platform. It's owned by a woman named Linda P. Smith. What's really interesting about them, I actually know Linda, and I work with her very closely. One of the things that's very interesting about Linda is that Linda, her platform was not venture funded like many of the other platforms that you see in regulation crowdfunding. She actually raised $110,000 from the crowd through reward crowdfunding, through donations, to build out By the Block. She did that in 2017. In 2020, she was one of the top 10. Her platform, By the Block, was one of the top 10 regulation crowdfunding platforms based on the amount of capital raised. And that is something that was really powerful to me, because that demonstrates what the community can do when we come together, pool our resources, and try to build out a community-led economic development. I think that's very powerful. That was a great question. As a matter of fact, one of the raises on her platform was a real estate project out of Houston called the Fifth Ward Project. And the developer actually raised the maximum amount at that time, which was $1,070,000 from 1,600 investors. They are already paying a dividend on that. So the people who invested in that process, they are already seeing their money come back to them, in a 4% dividend, and that is really important. And I think that as we think about this, and, we talk about how banks, won't lend us money, how venture capitalists, they won't invest in our companies, and understand that the other side of that is that these banks and venture capitalists are building wealth. They're becoming wealthy by investing in these businesses. And today, our community has the opportunity to do that. We have the opportunity to invest in businesses. And if you can imagine, if there's a business that I invest in, when I invest in that business, I am probably going to go to that business to product or service. And also when I go to that business, what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell all my friends about that. And that's some of the power of investment crowdfunding. Any other questions or comments? Okay, great. Well, I'll talk a little bit more about investment crowdfunding and some of the opportunities that exist within crowdfunding. So, in 2007, I worked as a community organizer in Louisville, Kentucky, and we created a business called Urban Fresh. And the goal of Urban Fresh was to get fresh local food into the food deserts in West Louisville, which is predominantly Black community. And all of our funding was based on foundations and nonprofits really giving us money to get us off the ground and started with this process. And, I looked at that, and as a community organizer and all the other community organizers that I engaged with, and, one of the main issues was being able to secure and get the funding that we were looking for. And within that process, fast forward to 2018, I met a woman from Chicago named Ina Jones, and she was on By the Block. And I was able to work with her on her campaign. She was able to raise $38,000 from 141 people in the community to build out a very similar project called Roots and Vines in Chicago. And because of the very public nature of crowdfunding, there was a foundation that saw the good work that she was doing, and that foundation actually invested some funds into her business to help it grow even faster. And there was a pastor at a local church who saw the good work that she was doing and the investment that she had gotten from the foundation. And he actually provided her with the opportunity to open a second location within the first year, based on them being able to raise those funds in a crowdfunding on a crowdfunding platform, which again is the community-led economics, right? She did not have to wait for the bank. She did not have to wait for the okay for a foundation. She was able to put her offer together and do this. And, for me, this is the power of community-led economic development through investment crowdfunding. Both sides win. The business or real estate developer wins. The community wins because, we're able to get a return on our investment. Yes, absolutely. As I've mentioned before, if you if you go on Facebook and you search for crowdfunding for the culture, crowdfunding for the culture is the name of a free Facebook group that CrowdMax, which is my company, CrowdMax Publishing, has created specifically focused on training and introducing not only founders and real estate developers, but the Black community to investment crowdfunding and the power of investment crowdfunding. This is a place where you have the opportunity to actually engage with the community and other communities. Next Thursday, we're going to have an event, and I'll put I'll send out the link and share that. If you email me at Bill Huston at crowd hyphen max.com. If you email me and tell me that you were at this event, what I'll be glad to do is I'll send you a link to the event that's coming up next Thursday, a link to the crowdfunding for the culture group, and 2 free ebooks on real estate crowdfunding and the essentials of crowdfunding. Any more questions, comments? Sure. It's Bill, BillHuston at crowd hyphen max.com. And if you email me there and you tell me in the email that you actually participated in this event today, then I will definitely send you the link to the program that we're going to present next Thursday. There will be a panel of 6 of us. These are real estate. No. Not at crowdmax.com, not Gmail. It's not a Gmail. It's at crowdmax.com. So there will be a panel of 6 people. There'll be, thank you. There will be a panel of 6 people on there, and they will be other Black crowdfunding professionals such as myself. There will be a Black woman who owns a platform called Fund Black Founders. There will be the 10K project group will be on there. And there will actually be someone representing the WeFunder platform, which is not a Black-owned platform, but he works in diversity and inclusion. And there will be 2, Juan Young, who raised capital using investment crowdfunding for his business, and Lanier Richardson, who raised capital using investment crowdfunding for a real estate deal in Baltimore, where they created a shopping center after raising $332,000 from the community. So, I think that will be a really powerful event, because you will get to see and engage with people who have done this successfully. I've had the opportunity to raise over $1 million for businesses and real estate projects, as a consultant and strategist in this space. So, my message to you and to everyone is that this is real, that it works, but we have to work it. Yes, that is absolutely the correct email address. Any other questions or comments? Would love to keep this going for another 5-10 minutes. Okay, well, I'll tell you another interesting story about crowdfunding, investment crowdfunding, and my experience in this space. So we crowdfunded a company. It was a small technology company, and what was really interesting about this was they didn't have a lot of support from social media. So we spent about a month preparing the company by spreading the brand, expanding their brand awareness and their brand reach, and letting them know and teaching them, teaching consumers about the brand, what the brand did, because there are some legal mechanisms around how you can advertise a campaign before it is legal and up on the platform. So once we went up on the platform, our goal was to raise $250,000. We ended up raising over $268,000, which we oversubscribed by $18,000, which obviously was great. We raised that from 418 investors. And the reason I say that is because those 418 investors presented a really powerful opportunity. Because if you go up on the platform, you can see, exactly what I just told you, that we raised $268,000. You can see how many people we raised that money from. But what you don't see is that because we brought in these 418 new people, we were able to increase sales by over 250% year over year, based on the fact that we brought 418 new investors in. Some of those investors became consumers, and all of those investors became people who were willing to spread the message about that. And, with investment crowdfunding, that is the power. I always say that, never discount a person, maybe because they don't have the money to invest, because they may have a network behind them that does have the money to invest. In an investment crowdfunding space, the most important button is that share button, and being able to spread your campaign as far and as wide as you can. That is something that is very powerful. Everyone's time and energy. I know time is always very hard for people to determine, how they're going to spend their time and their resources. And I appreciate you stopping through and listening to my presentation this morning. Again, check out crowdmax.com. That's my website and my blog. If you have the opportunity, email me at Bill, BILL, Huston, HUSTON, at crowd, CROWD, -max, MAX.com. And if you do that, I'll send you a couple of free ebooks on crowdfunding, the crowdfunding basics, real estate crowdfunding basics, and the crowdfunding essentials. And I'll send you a link inviting you to the event Thursday, where you can actually engage with 6 people who are crowdfunding professionals or who have successfully used investment crowdfunding, in the Black community to raise capital. Thank you, everyone. Again, I appreciate your time and your attention to this. Have a great day. Thank you.